to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to.
Mr.
Grant
Speaker,
Robertson.
thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I have great pleasure in rising to speak on the second reading of the Trademarks, International Treaties and Enforcement Amendment Bill. And I'm sure it's a great honour for the Minister to finally be reading the second reading speech, given that this bill was introduced by the Honourable Judith Tizard on the 8th of September 2008. So to remind those who are listening, clinging on every word of Parliament this evening in urgency, that this bill was first introduced on the 8th of September 2008. It was referred to the Select Committee on the 7th of April 2009. Submissions closed on the 15th of May 2009, and the committee presented its report on the 15th of September 2009. This bill is so old, Mr. Speaker, that when it went through the Foreign Affairs Committee, Mr. Hayes was twice the size he is now, and I'm half the size he is now, and I'm twice the size I was then. That's how long ago it is since we actually put this bill before the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. And, Mr. Speaker, it is somewhat odd when we look at the commentary from the Select Committee to see that there was quite a deal of concern, and I do recall this in the debates of the Select Committee. There was quite a deal of concern around the question of some elements being brought into force by order in council. And in fact, the commentary states that we accept that there is a valid reasons for commencement by order in council and urge the Ministry of Economic Development to implement all aspects of the legislation expeditiously. Well, it hasn't exactly been an expeditious process, Mr. Speaker. In fact, it's been a very, very slow process. This is not, of course, Mr. Power's area. It's, in fact, Mr. Brownlee's, and it was well before the earthquake, lest anyone think I was making any comments on that. This was all in 2009. So it does seem somewhat odd to be standing here in urgency discussing a matter such as this. But, of course, on this side of the House, we can say that the Labour Party supports the bill. It is a useful bill to essentially put in place what New Zealand agrees internationally. Thank you for asking that too, Ms. Dean, because what it actually does is allow us to implement the Madrid Protocol, the Nice Agreement and the Singapore Treaty. I think one thing I would note is if you're an international negotiator in the area of trademarks and copyright, you tend to go to reasonably nice places. I think that's one thing that we could deduce from seeing that. That's right. We don't see so many of the Khartoum Protocol or anything like that, do we? It's the Madrid Protocol, the Nice Agreement and the Singapore Treaty. And essentially, as we've already heard, this really is about dealing with counterfeiting issues. It's about making sure that we have internationally consistent trademark law, and it does offer, I think, an important step forward in making us consistent. It hasn't been dealt with in the expeditious manner that was previously stated. The second purpose of the bill is around strengthening enforcement, and I think it is important to note that the Select Committee's change, as already mentioned, that strengthening enforcement was changed by the committee to be consistent with the customs officers. So with those very few words, Mr. Speaker, I can say that the Labour Party is happy to say that we support this bill. It was given a thorough consideration by the Select Committee. Good changes were made, and I'm happy to commend it to the House.
Call David Clendon.